All right, y'all, welcome back. This is going to be lecture one. So, in this lecture, we will be talking about um, Plato's The Apology. So, this is the story of Socrates being accused of having been an atheist and sort of disrespectful and sort of a malefactor to society. The highest possible consequence of which was death. And so, the first part that we'll talk about is sort of his long, arrogant defense, and then he will be tried, and then he'll get his last word. Okay, so basically, this starts off with Socrates is being accused of atheism and slander of the elites in society, right? So they sort of mention like Socrates is, going to, the most renowned writers and judges and politicians and craftsmen and philosophers, and just, he says that they think they have wisdom, and he wants to learn what that wisdom is from them, but he finds that they are never wise, right? And so he uses what's called the Socratic method by simply asking questions and pointing out contradictions and answers, to make his point. Okay. And he, like I said, he finds himself possibly facing death, and he's being given his last defense. And first, he says that he is being slandered, not others, because they're claiming that he has that okay they're claiming that he's like the most wise in the land, right? But he says no, that's not true. um because others are claiming to know things that they do not, and are constantly being stumped by me, um that he is the most wise simply because he doesn't make any claims to having knowledge or wisdom, right? His his lack of claiming that he has any real knowledge or real wisdom is what sets him apart from his fellow man, as making him actually wise. And that the only wisdom in this world basically is to know not to claim some sort of knowledge or wisdom. And he basically goes around to elites in society and starts mocking them. And he starts drawing crowds of all kinds of people, like youngsters and other people. And, people are trying to pay him. And he's like, no, 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 I won't accept any payment. But, um, I'm not here to teach you anything. I don't know anything, right? So uh, it's kind of amusing. They also accuse him of being a corrupting influence on the youth of the sort of Athenian society, right? And again, he sort of kicks in with the Socratic method here, and simply uses his own questions and the contradictory answers of his opponents to sort of unravel their claims. And so, step one, he says, "Who does improve youth?" And he's arguing with Meletus here, and Meletus says, "Okay, lawyers and jurists and councils and assemblymen and those who run our government." And Socrates sort of walks him into the trap of claiming that, like, every single person on earth improves the youth and has an incentive to prove youth, except for Socrates, right? And so he sort of traps him into making this very bold claim. And then he sort of offers this analogy of animal training and tricks Meletus into admitting that, of course, there cannot just be a single human who's trying to be a corrupting influence. Okay, so step two. What Socrates asks, like, why the hell would I have an incentive to corrupt the youth, right? And he says, as you corrupt those around you, they start to tear you down and destroy you. I have an incentive to build men up. And so Socrates sort of, again, did the Socratic method, walks Meletus into admitting that there would really be no reason for Socrates to corrupt his friends and others, as it would actually sort of bite him in the ass, as Socrates is arguing. So step three, Socrates, they're arguing that Socrates is an atheist. And Meletus says, "Oh yes, of course you're an atheist." But then Socrates gets Meletus to admit that Socrates often is discussing the gods and the spirits and how they affect mankind and our morality. And so he can't be an atheist, right? How can you believe in gods and spirits and yet be an atheist? Um, and then, so step 4, we move on. Isn't Socrates simply ashamed of himself for going around and stirring up trouble? Shouldn't he just be punished for being a raconteur? And Socrates says, he has a duty to find the truth and justice in this world, and that backing down would be a disgrace to him and to the spirit of humankind. And that by killing him, um, the Athenian jurists would actually be harming themselves and their society more than Socrates himself. And so he turns to the idea of them not executing Socrates, that they would be saving their city's soul. Um, Okay, so he further goes on, and Socrates offers examples of his own personal moral rectitude in sort of following the laws not to execute captured sailors, and also when he refused to turn in a friend to be executed to a former despotic leader, right? You just got to kind of stick along with the readings. And then he also says, okay, well, Socrates stands up and says, any single person here who is one of those who I have, who I am being claimed to have corrupted, or any of their friends, or any of their fathers or family members, please stand up now and testify to the fact that I corrupted your son. And many of whom were in the audience refused to do so. Um, and so that's basically his final argument. Excuse me. It's a hot day. Mm. Okay, so the jury deliberates. They come back. Socrates is found guilty by a very slight margin, and is to be sentenced. And at this point, Socrates can sort of ask for forgiveness or some sort of forbearance, exile, things of that sort. And he, instead of doing that, he provokes them. And he provokes them further and claims that not only does he deserve to live, but to be declared a victor of the city, which is a declaration that is bestowed upon an Olympic athlete for having improved their society, and that he should be given free meals by the state, just like the rest of the victors of the city for the rest of his life. He also claims that he will never, and could never stop doing what he is doing because it is a command from the Oracle of Delphi and the gods, and the best and only way to truly live a good life. And so, yet again, the jury deliberates and they sentence him to death. And then Socrates is given his sort of final speech, and he claims that the jury um, fucked up, basically. Like they turned him into a martyr, and that he's not only that he's being executed because he was brave and a raconteur and just and morally right, and that the elites in society punished him for his haughtiness and punished him for not being more conciliatory and for begging for forgiveness. And at one point, he even says, man, what does he say? He says, I didn't bring my family here like many of you do when you're to be judged, um, to beg and cry and plead, because that makes you pathetic. and women, he said, excuse me, it's 3,000 years ago, it's sexist, but he basically says, it makes you cowardly. And how dare you expect me to do something like that when you have no right to even charge me with anything? And so he got very, very confrontive. Um, Socrates says now, you really screwed up because it's not just going to be me, but you're going to have a whole flood of little Socrates running around, fooling with all you elites, um, and holding you to even greater counts for your misdeeds. And his final quote here is that you are wrong if you believe that by killing you will prevent anyone from reproaching you for not living in the right way. To escape such tests is neither possible nor good, but it is best and easiest not to discredit others, but to prepare oneself to be as good as possible. And then, so finally, right before he goes to prison, he says, I would ask you that as my last request before I die, one day, when my sons grow to be men, go find them and pester them just like I did you, to make sure that they are good, upstanding citizens who love society and family rather than money and wealth. So it was the last shot. um, it was a pretty scathing critique of the Athenian system. So, okay, that's lecture one. In the next lecture, what happens is Crito, who is one of Socrates' friends, is sneaks into the prison he is being held in before he is to be executed to try to convince him to escape with him. And so we'll talk about Socrates' discussion with Crito and the sort of um, philosophical architecture he builds through the discussion. So thanks for being here with me. I hope you enjoyed it. Um, um, if you have any questions, shoot them over to me. Okay. Have a great day, y'all.